These markets are open during working days, Monday to Friday, but they are closed during weekends and public holidays. There you have it with Zabu. Invest your money and in securities plus the bonds that are available. All right, now speaking of our topic of discussion, I do have a gentleman coming in from the International University of East Africa. He is the team lead marketing at the same institution, and this is none other than Nicholas Isavidi, who is here to take us through this discussion of climate change. Many thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much, and the viewers of Smart 24, I'm happy to be here.
All right.
We are going to be discussing about climate change and food security, basically in Uganda, East Africa, and the world at large.
Okay, yeah. And this is a very huge concern everywhere, more so globally, when you look at the bigger economies looking at how they can address matters to do with climate change. But what, in a simple context, would a Ugandan viewing us right now understand about climate change?
All right, for a normal Uganda, when you talk about climate change, we are talking about issues to do with drought. Let's say in northern Uganda, actually it is the most recent one where we had issues to do with food. These people do not have enough food to eat, and that is what we talk about. And because of the food scarcity, it is brought by climate change. Whenever the climate changes, it means people are not able, to plow their land. If they are plowing, they are not able to get what is enough for them to eat. Then when we talk about floods in Ududa recently, whenever floods come, they take away all the food that these people are having. Remember, these people depend on the food that they plow and they grow. So when floods come and then it is taken away, it is washed away, then they will not have what to eat.
Okay.
And all this, it's caused by climate change.
Okay, and then you all get to realize that some of these particular situations that lead to climate change are human activities, some are natural upbringings, so these are things that we may not be able to fight, but we can prevent in the long run. If you're to look at some of the effects of climate change and what it has on society, just briefly, you've mentioned about the Bududa and case in point also in northern Uganda, but what other effects does climate change have onto Uganda?
All right, as a country, let's actually talk about because what has caused climate change in northern Uganda, one of it is tree cutting. Okay, when Ugandans deforestate or when they cut trees, that the one that they are using to make charcoal and all that, and then it is being sold. So each time they cut a tree, they leave an open space. When they leave an open space, remember when we're still studying, they used to tell us that when you plant a tree, the process of how you get rain and then you have green land and all that. So when you cut trees, and then when the sun shines too much, the land gets dry, and when it gets dry, whatever you plant, you will not be able to get something out of it. You get. So those are some of the things that are caused by that. Then the other thing that I could talk about is the natural calamities as well. We've talked about the floods. Now when it comes to floods, there are certain things that you cannot control as a human being. Recently in Kasese, actually Kasese every year we have floods, year in, year out. But again, as Ugandans, what are we doing about it? You get, because you're staying in a hilly area, every year it is flooding and you know it. So what are you doing about it? How are you planting your crops to make sure that when floods come, they are not washed away? Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Kasese coming in through this situation. Natural calamities in the country are some of the things that we hardly fight, or there are things that we can hardly prevent. Reason being, they happen naturally, in the fact that it's natural. But how then can our farmers mainly, because if you look at the floods, most of them wash away these plantations, they end up washing away even people's homesteads and all that. If you're to look at most of these effects, short term or the shortcomings, are they majorly caused by individuals, or there are things that we can literally accept that they are bound to happen? Just like you said, every year Kasese has floods. How do we then help these people who are around that area?
Okay, natural calamities, I can say in Uganda particularly, 50% are caused by us, the human being. The reason is, if you're cutting down trees all the time, you understand, that means in the next 10 to 20 years we shall have drought. And drought is usually caused by us, because if you plant trees, we'll not have drought. But Kasese in particular, or hilly areas, the solution is one. You just have to, first of all, if you know you're sleeping in a hilly area and you know floods are coming, you need to vacate the place. You need to at least to relocate to another location. And then also, a hilly area, there is a way how, they plow the land. You plant in one line, then you dig a hole so that when water comes, it doesn't wash away the soil. The soil is now, it comes into the other hole that you've dug. There are so many things that you can do. For instance, also planting, because they say if you plant, let's say, coffee on a hill area, it cannot be washed away. But when you plant maize on a hill area, when rain comes, it will be washed away.
Okay.
Yes.
And if you're to look at some of the things that lead to this, should we accept the fact that there are some areas that people are not supposed to settle around? Because when you mention Bududa, we've had cases of Bududa even since the landslides. Back then, the most terrible one back in 2010. And if you're to look at situations here, government has been calling upon people not to settle around. With the engagement you've had with civil society organizations and every other person who is actually trying to address climate change factors, what causes these people to stay in the same areas, even when they know there are some impacts they may face in the long run?
What causes these people to stay there is one, it's because this is where they stay. These are their homes. So sometimes relocating people from where they are staying, it is very hard. It becomes very hard because it is where their grandparents are, it is where their children are growing up, it's where they grew up from. So however much these people know that it is dangerous to stay in a hilly area, they will still stay there because they don't have where to go. In 2010, when we had the landslides, so many people were relocated. But after like 2 years, they had to go back. Because if you're leaving your 2-acre land and then you're going into a 50 by 50 square meter plot, and that's where you're staying, remember these people also, they are farmers. So relocating them means you need to give them enough land where they're going to farm, because they depend on farming to feed their families and all that. So it is a challenge. But what we are saying is that what can we do in order to solve some of these issues? What kind of crops can you grow on a hilly area that can sustain or that can withstand landslides when they come?
But what are the main threats of climate change? Because the viewers may ideally think it is all about the floods and all that, but the discussions different countries have been having, even with the just concluded COP26 last year, there was a discussion to address matters leading to climate change, because they understand that in the long run, we may be looking at the shortcomings now, but in the long run, it may even be worse. We're looking at global warming and all this, but where are the main threats now?
Okay, particularly if you talk about Uganda, the main place what you're looking at right now is we will get drought. Scientists are saying in the next 20 years we will have droughts. We will also have snow in Uganda in the next 20 to 30 years, and it's also being caused because of the because of climate change. If you talk about if we talk about what is it called? Maybe we'll talk about that one later. It has skipped my mind.
But it's still among the other things that will lead to climate change later on.
Yes, definitely. Definitely it is. So it is a big challenge, and what we are trying to do is that we've called upon the different stakeholders in climate change to come in, and we discuss. We find ways how we can be able to help our Ugandan people and how we can be able to address the issue of climate change.
Okay.
Because if it is not addressed, our children are the ones who are going to suffer.
Now let's do problem solving here. I think the best way is to solve a problem in most of the cases.
Yes.
Regardless of how things do happen, we want to solve problems.
Yes.
We want to see what next, what can we do to at least control this entire surge of climate change discussions, floods. There are things that we can at least do, and with the situation of this kind of nature, like you've said, in the next 20 years, drought, look at snow, some of these we cannot manage to contain as Uganda. We are not used to such temperatures, because here if at all it rains so heavily, you will still tell people, you will still hear people saying it's too cold. The other time, if it's actually too sunny, the temperatures, people will clearly tell you the temperatures are too hot for them to contain. How do we solve these problems now?
All right. For Kalamoja in particular, what we are saying is that we plant fruit trees, actually in the whole country. Okay. If we plant fruit trees, remember in those days when you're growing up in the villages, when the season for fruits came, you know, you can even spend the day eating fruits only without even eating food, and you'll be fine. But right now, if you go to the village, you can hardly find a mango tree, and if it's there, there are no fruits. You understand? And our parents, in their because for them they did not go to school, they knew what it means by food security. That's why they planted a lot of fruit trees. But at the moment, everything is being cut down, and we, the young ones now, it is now our role to go back and plant a fruit tree. Okay. It is very important, because in my P3 I planted a mango tree. Okay. P3. 10 to 15 years now, we are eating tree that I planted a long time ago. Okay. Okay. So if we plant trees now, if we plant trees in Karamoja, if we plant trees in the Soga region because of drought, 10 years from now, our children or our grandchildren will have solved the issue of drought. Okay. Yes.
You believe fruit trees, but can they be sustained in areas like Karamoja? Because even the temperatures in there, do they support these fruit trees, or there are specific fruits that can be planted in different regions?
There are specific trees that can be planted, and because what caused drought in Kalamoja is because of tree cutting. Okay. The more trees we plant, it will reduce on the too much heat that is over there. Because when they cut down, that means sunshine. The soil gets the sun directly, and it hits it so hard that makes it lose value, and it's not productive.
Okay. Yes. Are we so much on pressure to stop climate change? How much time do we have, or is it something that we shouldn't over focus on? Because when you talk 20 years, that looks very close. It's more of around 2040 here. And if you look at that, should we be on a lot of pressure to deal with climate change?
We should be on a lot of pressure. Okay. Because if you look 20 years back, we used not to have problems of food in Uganda, because we are the pearl of Africa. But right now, when you start having suffering because of food, then that is something. And the major cause of this is because of drought. And what causes drought? One of the issues is cutting trees. Now, why can't we stop cutting trees? Why can't we plant trees in this area so that 10 to 20 years from now, that issue is solved? Okay. Because Kalamoja it's not a dry land. It's not a desert. Okay. You get? All right. If it was a desert, then it's understandable. But even if in a desert, you can also irrigate, like what is being done in Egypt. Egypt is a dry country, but there is irrigation.
Okay, some of the other civil society organizations speak highly of using renewable energy as a way to at least control factors leading to climate change. But doesn't renewable energy also have an effect to the environment?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. Because what happens is that what we are trying to address here is one, we are trying to find ways on how we can reduce on the causes of climate change. You understand? So now when you use renewable energy, if we were using it at 100% and then we are reducing it at 50%, that means we are doing something. You get it? Yes.
Okay. And of course, if you're just joining in, we're discussing climate change in Uganda and the global worry of climate change. It has a lot of impact onto society, and this is one of the reasons as to why governments all over the world keep on seeking for advice and also encouraging their citizens to at least switch to better options that are environment friendly, because in the long run it may cost us a lot, not only in the economic perspective but also in regards to development of the country. More of this discussion is coming up shortly after the break, and I'm still with Nicholas Isabidi, who is the team lead marketing at the International University of East Africa. This is Smart Means Business. We'll be right back after the break.